Everyone. We are going to have the audience here to hear more about our HiSET and accommodations, applications, opportunities, and positive impacts. Today, Beverly, our accommodations manager, and myself, Sam Bauer, will be the ones to do our part of the primary discussion. We also have our vice president, Tony Howard, in the room with us as well. She's staying around just as she ended today. So we're the team that's going to talk more about accommodations. In today's presentation, we're going to cover a lot of things. We'll start with the overview and the overall process. We'll go to educator letters, which has been a very good topic, and I'm sure everybody will be excited to hear more about them. Scheduling, we'll talk about some educator resources, and then we'll give you some contact information at the end. Because we are a hybrid presentation, I will say if you have questions, give us 1 second to come back with the microphone so we can make sure that our online participants are also able to hear the question and answer. And we're going to jump right in. We've got a lot of great things to cover. First of all, I know that you guys are very familiar with accommodations, but we wanted to remind ourselves why accommodations matter. They play such a crucial role in providing test takers equitable opportunities to showcase their knowledge and skills. They can absolutely increase the test taker's confidence and comfort level in a testing environment and mitigate some of that anxiety that our test takers may feel that would lead to poor performance and have a negative impact on testing results. Also, accommodations support capable individuals with learning challenges on their journey, which may include college, vocational, or workforce pathways. As Beverly is our accommodations manager, she's going to take this next part to walk us through some of the basic overview of accommodations, as well as talk a little bit about the process. Thank you, Seth. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, we'll go back. So my explanation of the HiSET accommodations process is to visualize. One of the first items that is very, very important is looking for the information under the HiSET test taker the accommodation website. Here you're going to find the specific steps on what to do to walk your student through this process. Okay. You also want to make sure that you create a HiSET account for your students, because even if that student has been approved for the accommodation, you still need to make sure that they're registered. You also want to make sure that prior to submission, have all the supporting documentation that you require for that review. Whether that is key, whether it is documentation, supports the accommodation. You also want to make sure that you have all of your information. If you are not submitting the information for your student, then you want to make sure that your student is filling out all their demographics into that form and just submit your documentation and request completely and thoroughly and ASC. You want to make sure that the applicants, I believe. And then this is a great thing about the HiSET accommodation step. So what we will do is we will review the accommodation sessions and we will get back to the student or about the request service as possible. And if you have any questions in regards to the process, feel free to reach out to the website or us. So accommodations are available for test takers with diagnosis that are not limited to attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, psychological disorders, learning and other cognitive disabilities, physical disorders, mental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, hearing and visual impairments. On the HiSET website, we also have our accommodations policy. There are specific accommodations that do not require approval. Here are some examples. I'm not going to touch on all of them. They're listed here: scratch paper, earplugs, prescription medication, service animal devices, highlighters, or laptop. Now, these are accommodations that do require approval. In which, of course, you're going to make requests, extended time, separate room, large print, screen application, calculator, cosmo calculator, reader, scribe or keyboard and create additional supervised break time, and then send sign language and interpretive instructions for testing those who are deaf or documents. Most of these accommodations are administered in the test center with a controlled environment. There are other accommodations such as reading out loud or non-permitted for live online offered exams. As far as the application for accommodations, what should test takers submit? Well, we would need verification from the and diagnosis. On that document, we want to ensure that all this information is provided. Test taker name, the description of the disability, and the limitations related to the test taker, what the recommended recommendation is for modification, whether it is due to the test taker having anxiety and extra funds. The name, title, and telephone number of medical authority once specialist that is provided in the recommendation. Please make sure that and then we also want to make sure that there is an original signature of the medical authority or specialist. Any of this missing information can delay the review process. In most cases, in some cases, the letter from an adult educator working closely with the test taker will be considered. And the reason why is because you work hand in hand with your students, have a lot of observations and a lot of recommendations. So that is taken into consideration. Again, failure to submit required documentation will delay the approval process. If I haven't already touched on this, our approval process, our review process. In fact, 2 to 3 business days, we understand that looking for accommodations can get additional stress to the students, so we want to remove that stress as much as possible. So this is what the online submission looks like. It's very streamlined to capture all critical information that we require. We do allow multiple file uploads. And this also provides a case ID for the customer, student or educator side. When you do call in for an update or a follow-up, you have that case ID to reference. You can see under the submit request, this is what the web form looks like. The test accommodation request will automatically be defaulted. The student or even as the instructor educator can enter email address. You can enter your subject as needed. Quick description of the request system. Candidates, demographics to include first name, last name, phone number, what the exam is. You want to be specific as far as this is for the math portion, science portion, social studies, and so forth. And then you also want to make sure that you upload that documentation, again, whether it's medical documentation or so here's the we got a lot of feedback about making sure that can be included on these applications because there are a lot of involved parties, advocates, educators, and so we wanted to make sure that we covered that today, talk a little bit about the best practice. Unfortunately, right now, there is no systematic way for us to be able to do this. So our recommended best practice is to make sure that the test taker copies whoever they like to be able to see the information on any replies submitting from the HiSET accommodations team. This test taker is in control of who they are copying in, and they can make sure whoever they'd like to have copied in to receive information will be doing it. The accommodations team will work directly with test centers to schedule these test takers with the appropriate accommodations. If there are any test centers online or in the room, as I saw them for you that are going to be in attendance, it's important to know that that communication about the accommodation is separate from what it will come to. So they will have separate communication. And now here is a live part of our presentation today. We're going to talk a little bit more about the educator letters. So I will warn you that this is a real letter that is very much adapted to protect the private information. And because we started to talk more about educated letters, we got a sequel to Beverly. I did make a solemn promise to say every time we show this that please, please, please do not use an exact copy of this letter. We want to make sure that we are giving you the information to feel very confident and comfortable in creating these letters. We know a lot of times, even as educators, especially, we tend to overthink things. So giving real life examples of accommodation letters that were approved is a great way to kind of take the anxiety out and use the educator. So we wanted to walk through this. Please no hard copies. I'm going to read very specific detail. We have this slide here so I can show you an annotated version so you see all the steps. And again, as educators, repetition is key. So we're going to repeat this on the next slide, but I'm going to read some exact examples and passages from the letter. So all letters need to have be submitted on official letterhead. So if the program has official letterhead, needs to be submitted on there. We also need to include the name, title, and experience of the educator. I will also share that it needs to be the educator who is working directly with the students. We've had some questions in the past, or by process that sometimes it is the senior official or executive of the educational adult education program that submits this, but that doesn't work for our process. It needs to be someone who has daily interaction and consistent interaction with this student. We should indicate the accommodation requested, include any additional information, and again, provide full contact information. So if there are any questions from our accommodations team, they have the opportunity to follow up directly with the educator. So now we go back into this part. So this little checkbox checklist, we go through it. Of course, submit on official website box. Include title and experience. So in this letter, I'll just read this. I serve as a lead instructor at the Adult Education Center, and I'm also an educational consultant. I have worked with a wide range of students ages 10 to 70 with varying goals and learning patterns, frequently with students challenged by ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, anxiety, and other challenges. Giving this little snippet lets our accommodations team know that this educator has worked with students in this kind of diagnosis and has experience that lends a little bit more credibility and credence to the letter. So it's very important that you include some of that experience. It doesn't have to be long. You can see that this is a very brief description, but it's very helpful. Indicate the accommodation requested. Application for extended time should receive full and unequivocal support. Please grant student time and a half or double time for HiSET subtests. The key important thing here is ask for whatever you think is reasonable and let our accommodations team kind of sort out what is appropriate, right? So we've gotten feedback that sometimes the educator just doesn't know and is, well, is it going to be people if I ask for the wrong thing? And the answer is for everything that you think might be helpful. And our accommodations team will go through and figure out this further. Don't tie yourself up in on stuff. Include any additional information. So here this educator is to share some other observations, is highly analytical and a detailed thinker who tends to overthink while preparing due to a lack of confidence. Experiencing extreme test anxiety and makes it difficult to focus. Under the test, a regular time, he panics and is usually unable to finish all sections of his test. Has completed several official practice tests and received strong scores, but often fail to answer all of his questions. Can be corrected if he is granted an additional time. So this is just that wraparound of information and shows that there is a direct correlation between the experience of the educator and what they are seeing from the student. So it's important to kind of put this whole package together and then provide the full contact information. And so you'll notice our letter was a one-pager. So it doesn't have to be excessively long. It just has to complete all of these elements. For this particular session, we also put some additional examples from group accommodations letter to give you a little bit of different flavor. So references to previous IEPs. When previously enrolled in school, had an individualized education plan to support anxiety and PTSD. IEP included extra time for assessments and extra breaks as needed. Took an official practice test for reading, provided double time to complete, used all the time allotted, and that accommodation gave the ability to score well prepared. So that's a really strong paragraph there that will help you in your educator letter for accommodations. Direct language from previous IEPs. So in a previous IEP, there's a section specific to testing. We'll receive extra time, have directions clarified and repeated, questions restated and questions read orally for students, but reading subtests in a smaller setting. So again, it's also from a previously approved IEP. And then finally, the third example is an additional educator letter excerpt. As his teacher, I had the opportunity to work with Lorenzo and have observed his dedication to his education despite facing challenges. Previously was not having an IEP, is a hardworking, capable student, but requires additional time to process and complete academic tasks effectively. Recent circumstances have impacted the ability to work at the same pace as peers, particularly in high-pressure testing environments. Granting extended time would provide the necessary support to demonstrate true academic abilities without the unnecessary stress or disadvantage. So there's a lot of different flavors that we've covered in this, and this is usually a time when we'll pause for a second to see if we have any questions for you before we move on to the sessions. And if you'll just wait 1 second for us to bring back a mic, we can make sure we have the questions. So I will be there. Well, writing or whether she had that would find that something the same. The answer to that question is yes, because your experience will not change. That was a great question. But for these accommodations, for like specific tests or just for all times. It could go for either way. So if, for instance, agency have a lot of extra time for that, then we could go ahead and specify that, and we will not apply the other explanations to the other questions. So I think need some clarification on the reader part of it, because I've had the question asked about a reader that came from PSI. I got the impression that it was something that could be on a computer, or is it an individual person that would sit and read, or is that both? And how do I differentiate maybe what they're asking? I wish I could find, if I could find an email that was specific and not. So anyway, I have to read some more explanation. That's great. There, please. So in regards to have two options. So we have screen reader accommodation, or you can have a green live reader option. So we live reader, the kind of break this down like this accommodation type, is much needed as far as explanation. So for the live reader, please know that if that is simple or that accommodation isn't, please expect for that accommodation type to fulfill a little longer than the same time. The reason being is because
we have to coordinate with our vendor to make sure that our readers are available for varying tester and that's specific exam. So we do ask for at least 9 days in advance to make sure that we coordinate them essentially with the tester. Both I can provide. Yes. We do. The site should not be providing readers. That will go directly to my accommodations team. Yes. Okay, any further questions in regards to live readers before I touch on students? I'm the person. For reading tests, yes. Okay, so that was your question. Yes, to confirm that we heard this questions. So screeners are XP software that recognizes that content user for video. So their monotone voice, this will, is anally driven. But world reader text, the suite does also have an option to select a piece where you want it, so you can listen, have content repeated. Okay, is that option? But no, that is an accommodation. So all computers are compatible. So the question is, are all computers compatible? No, they are not. So this is specific software that we do require Microsoft Teams to install at our site. They have it on our site. They have it to install. We'll have our site team reach out to possibly the administrator or the support staff and install. Normally, what our process is for JAWS, the software that we use, is to schedule an installation appointment between the site and Microsoft team. And we have that given on this 48 hours in advance to make sure that software is installed and being involved. And then obviously we want to make sure that the software doesn't have any issues when we launch it. And if Sarah is not lining that is a great question. Are there any areas where we don't have any readers available? Not that valuable? No, we need to have. Yes, none that we do use have over 43,000 readers that are contact with the company. So that comments. So what our vendor does have, as you mentioned, are local contacts. If for some reason your site is an isolated rural area, now reader does need to travel, then we just ask for a little more time coordinating with our vendors to make sure that we have a reader set used. No extra costs. So we are implementing the essential HiSET. Is there a way we can through that website for access, or are we still being to students for their accommodations? That is a great question. I'm actually asking you to stop downstairs and talk more. So people to talk more about that. That's something that we should to their platform. So we would for them. They can stop down in the exhibit hall and ask. I'm sure you'll do some great questions. Anything else you can answer while we've got them like that? It's probably not the greatest time to ask this, but I have specific
thing. It's the first time I ever tried an educator letter. I have gotten accommodations for students before, but I haven't IEP for those. But I got a response back on this one that said, while I was asking for extra time in the reader, it said extra time is not, be advised that extra time is not allowed in the state of Mississippi. But I knew that not to be the case because I've gotten extra time before. So, the specific reason for this one was, is the person who, was not born in the United States, they've only been here for about 4 years, so it's an ESL sort of thing. So is it that extra time is not allowed for an ESL type thing, or is there some?
You've actually done a great job of answering my question for yourself. So an extra time is not available ESL accommodation. So, it's in state of Mississippi particularly, it's not available there. So, if you wrote your letter to specifically say it was because of ESL, that would really suffice.
So if I rewrite it, then I don't focus on ESL. I mean, he's from a country, it's not Spanish or English, and that's the only language, so it's, and he speaks Arabic, so that's a completely different alphabet, completely different thing, we don't have that, so if I. No, so we couldn't probably get any.
So if you think about it from the perspective of accommodations for disabilities, they was regulatory or having proficiency in English is not a disability. So if we get it was that. Was that a workshop? And then that's something open to looking at other states. So the state of students, they do have a law that qualifies beyond elderly with disabilities. So it is special to Massachusetts and not actually available to other states. They don't have that same law. What if a student doesn't have like their IEP, they know that they have, would the letter be a no? As like submissions? Maybe I should listen.
So the answer to your question is yes. And the educator letter was.
So like if they got an occupational diploma, we know that they had, an IEP to go that route, should we send that in or?
Yes.
We should-
Yes, honestly, with accommodation approvals here is example, aware more could be, very, very beneficial for the process. And I didn't already touch on this, our accommodations team, when we do review the requests, we abide by our PSI policies and honestly by the business systems. Any other questions here? Before we see if you have any more questions? Yeah.
This goes back to your allowable accommodation, which one I want is the transparency. So if it's a computer-based test, then how do they get that transparency? Is that something that they click on the computer to get that color that they need? Or are they expected to get down to transparency and put it up in front of the screen and have that save and hold, or how's that work?
Environment. There are free practice tests online where you can go in and pick the contrast and select different contrasts. I would recommend if you have students, let them go into the free online practice test and play around with those settings to make sure one of those settings, works well. I think I said it, how many colors? I think, we'll look at that and like. Can't remember where it's on.
You could go into the text and look for contrast.
Yep. Yep. Woo.
One more question about the readers. So you're asking for a reader. Should we pick one? If we don't really have a preference for the library or streaming reader, do we just need to ask for a reader either off of stream or in person?
In the case of a reader, I would suggest be specific that wants to watch the reader for your student. Perfect.
Do you have particular or do you remember
Well, with that. Well, then, so that is part of it. Any sort of negative amount of support we do that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So for those that did not hear, we will be sharing our resources. That we will be having Any other questions?
How the calculator is calculated. And different types of have a different type of calculator. I noticed that it's kind of be a issue, a couple of things. You guys don't allow student to bring a calculator to assessment, right?
And I'll answer that question in a microphone. No, we do not allow students to bring their own calculators. The test center will have a calculator. They're taking computer-based tests. The computer-based test has an embedded four-function calculator. And four-function calculators and then what is needed for the HiSET test. Individual states have different policies on which specific calculator beyond a four-function calculator may be used. But a student's never permitted to bring one.
Still, yes. Oh, so it would be, they would not have access to one, they could hold it, if they got accommodations. Like a calculator, instead of using the computer based.
So let me clarify the question and ask it online. So you're asking if a student does not want to use the calculator that is on the computer screen, if they are able to use a handheld calculator. So if the test center is providing, yes, we would be able to use it. But the test center needs to provide. Good question.
We did it use for every single math.
The test center can use the calculator for whatever needed. If they need to use it on a video like this. Well, I don't think every math question needs thinking about it. Yeah, so.
It's something that I can instruct, you give it instructions that it's added.
Yes. Absolutely. Correct. Well, schedule an accommodation test taker process right here. We verify that the test taker has an account and approved accommodation. Call or email accommodation agencies schedule the test paper. So it's very important that we understand that they need to work with accommodations to get them scheduled. If they schedule on their own without going through accommodations, they will not receive what is necessary because our process requires accommodations to schedule them. So we recently had a situation where a test taker had set the time, but they scheduled themselves. And we're concerned because they would allow them to have their accommodation, it's because we didn't set it up, because we didn't schedule it. So it's very important that accommodations does the schedule. We do have our phone number provided up here. Accommodation will contact the test taker and the test site to verify what works. So dates and times are very important. I will also say, particularly with accommodations for private rooms, test takers are often very concerned that they want to see the site. But there are only a finite amount of private rooms that may be available at a specific time. So their preferred date and time may not be available. And Beverly's team is amazing at trying to get something that will work. But it's very key to be very flexible when you have some accommodations, if you're looking to get a test very quickly. So the more time or the more flexibility that you have, the greater chance of getting it within the time frame that you're looking for is there. 1 second. It says to call forward for accommodations. There's not an email address there if you prefer call overs. I'm gonna run this one back into the room. So my suggestion is to call. And the reason being because we have an influx of email, not that we're not sending to them, but that turnaround time for email requests is about 24 to 48 hours. And if it's being a high testing season, definitely want to contact us soon. There's a phone number and all these are including email address. By the way, if you are to email the email address or the CEO of this at PFI, we'll make sure that it's shared for visual references. We, it is the process. Students are already struggling. For one reason or another, with accommodations. Because we come from their house, we call to get them scheduled, they can't do it, they can call the testing center. They email the student 3 days later, we don't, the students, you know, it's just a struggle for these students that I don't think we should. You will literally, yeah, all they love for to do it, but we've heard that some testing centers just, they put it in the hands of the testers because they don't have the manpower to do it. That's exactly right. We have the power to schedule and make sure that somebody's available to help them. They can't do that. I guess that's kind of screening work, and then, you know, we pay for their tests, so then when they do get it, there's email, so they can approve, then they have to come back, we'll have to call, make payment. It's just been really convoluted, and I don't know, you know, she does like, how can we take the middleman out of by the testing? Because sometimes you guys are waiting, and then getting to you. Get that. Calls, she called, scheduled, well, I don't know if it's because we're all in the testing center, maybe that was different. But she called, she scheduled it and gives the good information. The same phone. And so it kind of, but I don't know if that's. Yeah, we're not accepting. I don't know if that's because we're. Is it not? We actually very much appreciate that feedback. I think to your point, we were talking about taking the middleman out. The test center is really our way to be able to serve these students. And again, sometimes test centers have limitations with what's available because of staffing.
So if there's a set time accommodations, they all have a finite schedule to work with within a certain time period. And staffing is a concern all around for a lot of programs and the safety of the testing centers. So there's staffing, there's also the ability of things like or additionally, as we talked about earlier, when we were talking about readers, we schedule those with the party, and we have to make sure that the schedule of the test for once will line up where we can get resources that are available. So it's really about making sure that we get those resources aligned, and we need to be the ones that are coordinating that with the test center. But I'm sure you can imagine, if a test center in a popular area, just allowed anybody to schedule willy-nilly, how much of not only financial, but like an administrative burden that would be. And they would do their best, right, to do the right thing for the students. But everybody's team being the central point of scheduling really helps making sure that we can serve as many students as possible in this particular center without overwhelming them. So I understand and empathize that the process is very frustrating, but I feel like in your case, when you're talking about your colleague that is scheduling and paying for right there, so we can guarantee spots. I think those are some of the things that you can work through as steps. It takes a village. Yeah. That really good things to add with that.
So I'm thinking about everything that Seth had mentioned, when you think about accommodations type and one specific type and single type, that's going to be very, very easy to schedule because there are seats and sessions that are easily available. However, when you're comparing the accommodation types, for instance, you've got a full time, now with private room, you have to ensure that the same has the availability and that room space available for the students. Now that's two, so let's put in a reader. So what I had mentioned earlier, so planning the things to set up a reader, that's going to be where we would say even more. One of the suggestions that I could provide is make sure that when you call in, you have 3 preferred days and times. That will also help us and give us an indication of what that time frame looks like for the students. The agents on my team are very well equipped with all the resources we need to try to find the best date and time for the test. So we definitely understand the struggles, we hear the frustrations, and we are moving to the process.
Is there ever a time when we'll be able to schedule, like, say they just have extended time, scheduling on?
Unfortunately, but we hear Christmas. We'll be a lot of or HiSET specific to accommodations and the various our teams should be the ones to control us.
You mentioned the 9-day. I recommend starting it well before that, a few days before that, at least, because there is a little bit of back and forth. Like you said, it's sometimes that 9-day, it gets beyond that 9-day. So the day that you've been working toward is no longer available because you're not too close to the dates. Don't rely on that 9 days, do it a little bit earlier. And also, you have to think of it from the test center's perspective too, because at my testing center, they have to completely clear the schedule for one person to test with accommodations when they have a reader or need an extra room because they only have the one testing room. So it's really hard to get them scheduled. But what I do too, I will call the testing center and ask them for recommended dates before I even start the process, so I can know what maybe they'll have available to help sleep with. So yeah, communicate with them beforehand and see, ask them what's a good day that I might be able to do the accommodations. Yeah.
And piggybacking off what you just said, we are a pretty small program, only have one certain day. But we have had other centers call us to see, about availability, and we have the ability to open up sessions, like on a day that we're not testing, and sometimes if you are really sweet, testing center will do their best to accommodate. I mean, I know we've done it several times for people who just can't, you know, or we have 2 rooms that we do private readings in, and they're booked until mid-May, I want to say. And we've thought about opening another day just for that, because they're in, so, you know, you can always, that's the worst thing that you can.
So if, you know, you as the instructor on the educator reach out to the site to confirm that some meeting time is open, please note that even if you do mention that to my team, it's still going to confirm with that site. It's like the telephone. We love the fact that, you know, we're being proactive and helping with us scheduling, but we do have to have confirmation from the site, and then we move forward. Two in the general email address. Just think you can reply to the string of emails that are going back and forth if they need to contact Accommodations. So that open case number that they work, they can continue to reply to the open case number as well.
So when we're helping our students call for an accommodation, is there a way to stay with, I know it's a call center, is there like a way to stay with that one agent throughout the process of scheduling the accommodation? Because like, part of this problem is, like, they're emailing back and forth, testing center, a lot of the times they're overlooked, and someone's like, it's not, the testing center has an email back, but then back, they did that 4 days ago. Calling in and like, hey.
All our meetings, they all have the same training. So I know that there are some favorite agents that are able to communicate with. If you're having, you know, difficulties or anything like that, my suggestion is to reach out via email to EAers, and just let me know as well if you're having any difficulties in sending, and I'll see which agent can help you best. And this particularly comes into play when you have group schedule. You know that you probably don't like seeing the phone, you're going to schedule multiple telemeters. Use the email as a resource, because the last thing that I want you to is not only what 90 minutes to, you know, 2 hours or so, because again, coordination efforts are to do behind the scenes and be a lengthy process, especially when you're calling. We have test takers to schedule and maybe to schedule all options. And again, you know, as I mentioned before, when they all have multiple accommodation types. So we're just adding more time. Okay, we have talked a lot about this little chart here as we go through some of the questions and answers. But I'll just walk through it very quickly. So as you slides up there and look at them, this chart will give you the accommodation type, whether it's available in a computer-based test or a paper-based test, and some of the scheduling notes, such as for extended time, the accommodation team will contact the site if needed. And then, of course, for the scribe, it needs at least 9 business days to be able to schedule the service provider. So this is a nice little chart to be able to have a reference. Again, flexibility in being open to multiple options is definitely critical to scheduling. As we've talked about, this is a lot of discussion this time as well. Really quick, we'll talk about some educator resources. We're going to net about questions. We just have HiSET practice tests available, and last year we did a nice refresh. So 2024 versions has a new free practice test, which is free practice test 8, as well as paid practice test 8 and official practice test 12. We do have the free practice test available on our website to download in English and Spanish, and you are able to order
the other paid practice tests, or if you are a state or an education program, you are able to, order the official practice tests in our website. There is a related to this presentation that is for our practice.
And then, for my friends there, we do have links in the presentation to the computer-based practices. So really, this is there for look, feel, playing around with some settings, this is happening. Yes, it is one form, so no matter how many times you take it, it's the same form. It lasts between 30 and 45 minutes of the practice test, and you do get immediate feedback. We recommend you so they're used to the format of the look and feel. And it is some contact information. So we have testing services as well as the PSI and accommodations and information listed up here with their hours of availability. And again, we'll be sure to share this slide out for you. And that is the end of our prepared slides. So we've got another forum to open it up for some questions.
Is the Spanish version of the new official practice test available yet?
Not yet, but soon. As my friend Libby has told many people who have stopped by already, it's going to be out soon. Do we have a specific date? Not yet, but we are very close. Any question?
We are very excited to read this.
Anything online? Well, we are happy to stay here through the duration of our presentation time, answering individual questions. We thank you for your time today and asking such great questions. I think we get the most out of an interactive study. You guys have not disappointed. So please don't see us out of our booth. We have lots of goodies. We have some goodies up here, so if you want to talk afterward, come up with me and see my set of goodies. But thank you so much for your time.